Welcome to Wrestling Goons Radio, the podcast from the IWC for the IWC. And this is WGR's Raw Reaction for September 21st, 2015. We're going to briefly tonight go over what happened in Night of Champions. Kane is back. There's a lot to get into, so much going on. I'm going to introduce the panel today, but first I want to tell you that you can listen to us at WrestlingGoonsRadio.blogspot.com. From there you'll be able to get all of our social media links. Thank you once again to Max Sports Channel and Power Station FM for having us on the broadcast. Brian Compton, welcome to the show, sir. Tell me, coming into Monday Night Raw, did they answer any of your questions from Night of Champions?
I'd have to say they didn't. I actually did not expect to be watching Raw and actually looking at a rewind of Night of Champions.
What was your biggest complaint then, and your best thing and your worst thing coming out of it?
Biggest complaint is I did not see anything different than I saw at Night of Champions. Storylines were not progressed. The only thing I am actually looking forward to is seeing where they're going to go with the Kane fiasco.
Want to welcome Mark Peck to the show. Mark, welcome, and I'd like to ask you, did Raw do anything for you coming out of Night of Champions as far as connecting any dots?
It connected a few dots, not many, but if you can say that Night of Champions was the exact same as Monday Night Raw, then obviously you didn't see the Paige heel turn.
There was definitely something different that progressed, but I'm going to agree with Brian. Not much else progressed. Other than that, that was huge as well. We're going to get into that Divas thing because there's many people on this show, a.k.a. Dan Tanner, that felt like the Divas Revolution wasn't progressing. This obviously proves tonight that it was. We're going to start, though, with the Wyatt family because, as we said, they started Raw. The Wyatt cut a promo. Roman interrupts. It's Roman Reigns versus the world. He tells Wyatt to send the boys to the back and fight him one-on-one. Bray actually obliges, and they brawl for a while, but eventually, Braun Strowman and Luke Harper come down, and they take out Reigns. Dean Ambrose comes down to try to help out his buddy, but the numbers are still in the favor of the Wyatts, and that's until Randy Orton shows up. They clean house. Ambrose and Reigns do a double team on Strowman and knock him out of the ring, but not off of his feet. My biggest complaint from this is simple. They didn't even mention Chris Jericho from Night of Champions. The announcers didn't put it over. Reigns didn't put it over in his promo. I don't know what the point of Jericho is now when you don't even allude to it on Monday Night Raw. Mark, is there a reason why I should have a problem with this?
Not necessarily. It was a one and done, and that's what I kind of expect from Chris Jericho nowadays anyway. He might come back later on down the line and back into the feud, but I think this was just a big name to try to sell Night of Champions and the hype, and it was a one and done until Randy got done filming.
Brian, would you agree with that, or you think that I should have a reason to be upset?
I think everyone should have a reason to be upset. Am I the only one that's wondering how come Randy Orton came back so quickly? If they were putting over that he got knocked out by the Wyatts and Braun Strowman, if it was such a vicious attack, how is he back so quickly? And is it because they realized Y2J wasn't going to go anywhere?
We didn't see Orton again, so who knows? Guess we're going to have to find out on SmackDown. Maybe they'll allude to it a little more there. I just had a really big problem with it. I hope that they're able to connect the dots a little better for me. I will also want to talk about the fan interference that happened at the Night of Champions. We thought that it might have been a work. It turns out that it was not. There was a man, 37-year-old Oscar Ramirez of Houston, Texas. He'll be spending 10 days in jail. The WWE is not playing around. And guys, if we can tell you anything, don't jump that barrier. The WWE, they're not joking. Brian, thoughts?
The mugshot's been circling around. I don't know if you've noticed. The guy's very proud of himself, and I guess rightfully so. He can say he's been in the ring at the same time with 2/3 of the Shield and the Wyatt family 2.0.
He was wearing a Roman Reigns outfit. He was prepared, like he wanted everybody to know that he was the third man. Mark?
That's pretty silly. Thankfully, he wasn't in the ring with like the Big Show or something, because I'm pretty certain the Big Show or CM Punk or someone who just doesn't like people in general probably would have knocked him out. That would have been horrible if he stepped in the ring with Brock.
And this for 1985, and this for Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was Bruiser Brody and Chief Jay Strongbow. They'd be putting them boots to people. It'd be ridiculous. They'd been getting destroyed. Fans just do not understand that there's a point where you don't cross that line, and that line is the barrier. Big problems if they do.
How about the fact that Roman Reigns still came in through the audience the very next night?
Roman continues to come into the audience. You would think this would have stopped after he got hit in the head with the briefcase, but WWE still lets it continue. And it's not like it's getting him over anymore. He's not benefiting any more or any less from it, in my opinion. Mark, do you think I'm right about that?
I believe that it's going to be his eventual turn is going to be he's trying to relive too much of the Shield, and because I mean everything that he does is resemblance of the Shield, including to try to make a Shield 2.0 or 4.0 at this point, whatever it is. But on the edge of Randy coming back from the quote unquote injury due to the Wyatts, Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose took the exact same punishment that Randy Orton did, and they were back on it the next night. So it's not like it's making Braun look any weaker, really.
That's true. At the same time, where does Randy fit in the picture? Is he now going to be the third guy?
I don't think that he'd be the third guy. I think honestly that they may have expected a bigger reaction with Y2J, or they had a different direction and it didn't pan out. I feel like as far as the storyline goes with knocking these people out, it would just serve the story more if they stayed out just a little bit longer.
My only thought about bringing him back early is I feel like that maybe they're trying to steer Wyatt away from Reigns and Reigns away from Wyatt, and maybe they feel like Randy Orton is the next person for Bray Wyatt. Maybe that wasn't the original plan when they wrote him off and they called it audible. So that could be the only explanation I have for it. But like I said with Chris Jericho, Mark thinks it was a one and done. I don't think you do that shoulder bump at the end and call it a one and done. I feel like there has to be more to it than that. And maybe there is, and we're just gotta wait a while to get it. But no, I mean, they're really bad about this. Leaned on to the next segment we have in the back, Seth Rollins looking for the Authority, and that's where he finds another surprise. It ain't the Authority. Corporate Kane is back. He reminds Seth that his leg was smashed by somebody, but he's all better now and he's back to work. Seth has reminded him that what happened last night and why he did what he did. Kane has no recollection of it whatsoever because that was Monster Kane apparently and not Corporate Kane. They are two different people. Rod, did you see this coming? Because I sure didn't.
Not the comical side of it, but it's refreshing because it gives a different dimension to it. Almost where TNA tried to do it with the Abyss, and they failed ultimately. I like seeing it. The quirky comedic side of Corporate Kane, completely oblivious to the Demon Kane and the destruction that he's causing.
I didn't like it at first. I thought this was going to be awful. And then as it went along throughout the night with all the backstage segments, it got funnier and funnier. By the end of the night, this is one of those things where I was convinced that I was changed. Kane is going to be able to pull this off in a double role. Part of it's going to be funny, and the other part is going to be destruction. Mark, as you know, my biggest complaint is why didn't it take them 15 years to get creative with Kane?
I have no clue as why it took 15 years. I'm just happy that they finally came around. But I do think, at least for the last little bit, creating the Corporate Kane, they actually had to invest into that character completely so that people would actually have a remembrance of Corporate Kane and he would actually be a major role in WWE in order to allow this simultaneous role between the Demon and Corporate Kane to actually work.
He's going to be, obviously, as we're going to allude to later in the night, after Seth Rollins. That's going to be his goal. Don't know if he's going to get the belt out of it. We'll just have to see. We're going to move on to Stardust and the Ascension versus Dragon Neville. There isn't much to say about this. It was a match where the Neville and the Dragon took a win back from Stardust and the Ascension, but they got it as champions. Mark, is there going to be anything going from this, or are they just going to take turns swapping wins back and forth?
I have no clue, although I was looking forward to a fallout of this from Night of Champions. I was not looking for a rematch. I was looking for maybe some promos, maybe just some backstage attacks or something. This right here is absolutely the worst segment of the night, and you're right, they were just swapping back and forth wins. I hate that just about as much as I hate swapping back spots in a match.
I gotta agree with you. This was definitely the worst segment of the night. I have no idea the direction creative of where they're going. Brian, how about you?
I'm going to wholeheartedly agree with both of y'all. I just feel like this was the exact same match that I got from Night of Champions, just with a different victory. Different team won, same moves were used, maybe a different person got the pin, but that's about it. Hopefully, they can split this team of Lucha Dragons and Neville up and they can go into bigger, better feuds, because I was sure that with a victory last Night of Champions, that the Cosmic Wasteland was going to go on to a different feud and see a different dynamic at least.
Apparently, they've changed their name again. What was their new name?
I don't want to pull a JBL and say it wrong. It's the Astral Alliance.
Yeah, that's it.
JBL called it, sorry JBL, but he called it the Astro Alliance. I guess because he thought he was in Houston, it would be funny.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe the WWE was like, you know what? Maybe they found some kind of copyright problem with Cosmic Wasteland, like they do with all their other names they have. Everybody knows I'm a huge fan of Stardust. This is not helping him at all, and I feel like he's gonna wind up being Cody Rhodes sooner rather than later because of it, and that is a travesty in my opinion.
It's actually not possible to bring somebody back from the dead, sir.
That's another thing that leads to another, and I think that Cody Rhodes is gone, but I'm wondering about the creative direction of Stardust. Mark, do you think that it can be saved?
I think it could be saved, but Brian's right. They need to move on away from the Lucha Dragons and Neville onto some other trios team. Maybe Bo Dallas can have a trios team. I don't really know. I'm thinking maybe they're just stalling until Wade Barrett comes back and him and some tag team come up. But if that's the case, then he needs to hurry up and come back. But on one other note, Brian, dead things can arise. His name is The Undertaker.
Unfortunately, he's right.
See, I was going to go with the new face of fear, Bray Wyatt.
I don't know if he's ever died, though. And looking at all the time John Cena buried him. Oh, I went there. Speaking of Bo Dallas, Mark, we had him on Monday Night Raw. He made an appearance facing Ryback. Kevin Owens is on commentary. Bo Dallas says that Ryback didn't believe, or he did believe, that he could beat Kevin Owens, and that's just not possible because Kevin Owens is much better. Owens is the best part of this match because his banner with Michael Cole and Byron Saxton is epic every single week, and it just got better. Ryback won, but it took way too long to get to the finish here. I feel like Ryback should have beat Bo Dallas very quickly. Owens tries an attack afterwards that fails, and he runs away like a coward like he's supposed to do. This match did absolutely nothing for me as far as progressing Ryback. I feel like he should have had a promo with Owens somehow. Brian, did it do anything for you?
It didn't do anything for me. However, it was entertaining watching Kevin Owens. In terms of the match itself, it could be that they were trying to show some type of psychology in the match that, yes, Ryback should have just demolished Bo Dallas, but because Owens was at ringside, maybe he got in his head and couldn't really concentrate on the match.
Mark, you think that could be a direction they were going with it?
I believe that could be a direction that they're going with, but I feel that besides the last spot where they keep teasing the shell shock to Owens and eventually he will get shell shocked, I think this did more for Owens getting over than it did for Ryback, really.
I don't know how Owens can get over any more than he already is. I mean, it definitely helped Owens more than it helped Ryback this segment because you had Owens being the only person talking. I want his banner with Cole to go somewhere because it's good, and you can obviously see that it agitates Cole. I feel like they have money here. I don't know when they're going to capitalize on it, but it's there. We're going to move on to the next segment, which was probably my best segment of the night. There is no probably. It was. Charlotte's celebration is what it started out as, but it ended as Paige's pipe bomb. Flair brings out his daughter for a celebration along with PCB. Charlotte puts everybody over in PCB, including Paige. Paige is having none of it, and she turns heel. She reminds everybody that she won the Divas title on her first night on Raw, and she was the first NXT Women's Champion. She trashes everybody in the Divas division, name by name, including Becky Lynch. Then she says that Charlotte will lose that belt to Nikki in a matter of time. And she storms off. The Bellas come out to reiterate exactly what Paige said, and we're going to get Brie Bella in a match against Charlotte that follows. Charlotte wins it, of course, with a figure eight, but Brie worked a pretty solid match, in my opinion. With everybody complaining about these Divas teams, does it finally make more sense now to you, Brian?
No, not really. I mean, it makes sense, but does it entertain me? No. but it makes sense. This was probably my worst part of the night, actually, because watching Charlotte talk about Ric Flair and almost crying, and it was painful to me, actually. I almost wanted to fast forward through it. Thankfully, Paige dropped her pipe bomb, and although it was a great pipe bomb, I would rather listen to Paige on mute and watch her wrestle than listen to her talk.
Do you think that it's possible that WWE kind of knew that you were going to hate that part with Ric Flair and that's why they did it?
Absolutely. And I think that they did it on purpose to make it extra painful so that when Paige did drop her pipe bomb, people were so relieved that that would be what they were talking about by the end of the segment.
Mark, what was your thoughts on this pipe bomb? Did it save the Divas Revolution that we both know was never really dead to start with?
You're right, sir. It was never dead to start with, and the majority of fans just hop on everything and have a 15-second time span that they can actually watch and enjoy something for what it is. This was definitely the best segment of the night. Everyone talks about, oh, AJ Lee was the anti-diva first. Well, obviously you don't know your WWE history because Paige actually started the whole anti-diva gimmick when she was 18 in FCW, because the majority of you don't even know what FCW was, nor did you watch it. Going on from there, what she said was exactly right. I had been wanting Natty to come out and be a part of the Divas Revolution, and it seems that Paige actually got every character more over than they probably were at the beginning of the pipe bomb.
To that, I liked her comment about Becky Lynch being one of the most irrelevant of all the divas there. By her mentioning her in that pipe bomb directly like that, that's pretty much putting her up there with the rest of them just by saying that. And I see a nice little feud between the two arising from that.
I definitely think that this one segment right here sets up 3 or 4 different feuds that you can come out of this Divas thing with, so it was necessary. I feel like now that you gotta have more, and I also feel like we shouldn't call it pipe bombs. 1, I feel like that's an injustice to CM Punk. 2, I feel like they pulled a page out of AJ Lee's promos here. If anybody can do it though, I'll say it would be Paige. And it did feel very AJ Lee-esque, in my opinion. We did have the return of Natalya. She's going to be facing Naomi later tonight. Naomi did wind up beating her with the butt bomb, but Natalya's back on TV, and that is a good thing for the Divas division. We had a 6-man tag with the New Day and Rusev. They faced off against Dolph Ziggler and the Dudleys. The New Day is hilarious, and that is the only reason why we're going to talk about the segment. The match itself had Rusev taking advantage of a distracted Dolph Ziggler. Dolph called sweet chin music, as I like to call it, the super tech, whatever you want to call it. There's too many of them going on right now in WWE, in my opinion. Brian, am I right or wrong?
There's so many things wrong with this 6-man tag match. I guess I'll start with the fact that there's already 3 members of New Day, so I'm not sure why they chose to put Rusev in there with them.
Because they're finally using Xavier the right way, as a manager only.
And that's fine, but why Rusev? Of all people, you're going to put Rusev with them instead of Ziggler.
Have you seen up, up, down, down, sir?
I know, but that's kayfabe. Because I guess that's their way of turning Ziggler heel and Rusev face.
I'm going to say that at the very end, as Rusev is screaming at the top of his lungs, and Xavier is standing behind him screaming at the top of his, and the face that Kofi's making, if you guys can go back and look at that, it'll make you laugh for the rest of the day. I think they're comedic gold. If they're going to make Rusev comedy, you need to put him with the New Day, so that's the way to get him over that way. I don't think they're going to. I think this was a one and done. But for what it was, at least Rusev did lose. I'm happy about that. We also find out that at MSC, we're going to get a rematch for the Dudleys and the New Day. Mark, is this going to be a tables match?
I believe that they should make it one. It's back in Bubba and Devon's hometown, back in their backyard. So winning the 10th title, I can see it happening at Madison Square Garden. If it wasn't going to happen at Night of Champions, I think that would be more fitting for them. But also to add to, Rusev was added because that is one of the theme songs that Xavier Woods knows how to play on the trombone, and he does it amazing. Also, Xavier Woods was not in the match because if you looked at and watched his promo at the beginning, the damn Dudleys put him through a table and he had to go to the hospital to have that chunk of the table removed from his butt.
Calm down now, Mark. He said darn Dudley. Now, Mark gets a little worked up when he sees tables get destroyed.
Okay, see, my only concern, and it was my concern from the beginning with Rusev, WWE Creative has a tendency of taking serious characters, i.e. Kali, and turning them to these comedic roles, and it just kills their character. Now, that's not saying that that would probably kill his character, but I'm afraid that that's what the direction they're going to go, and they've already done that with Big E.
Well, they've already done that with Rusev. If they could do anything, this is something different that might get him away from the stalker love giving, because that's where they have him at now, and that's stupid. Rusev needs to be either funny or a brute. There doesn't need to be anything extra, in my opinion.
If it gets him away from Lana's Summer Rae storyline with Ziggler, then I'm all for it.
Mark, you got any final thoughts before we move on from this?
Shout out to the best part of the match. Summer Rae actually did something right, and she saved the trombone. That was the best part of the match.
Yeah, that was pretty nice on that catch. She did not let it touch the ground at all. And yeah, and shout out to Xavier. Nailing Rusev theme song. Awesome stuff. If you're in the crowd, you gotta love New Day. Just clap right along with them, because New Day rocks. The main event, John Cena and Seth Rollins, guys. I've seen this match before, right? Because we got the same ending. John Cena hits the AA, one and done, it's over. Seth Rollins has lost to John Cena. Apparently, WWE has instigated a new rule where no more kicking out of finishers. You're gonna lose once your finisher is hit. I guess they watched too many Kevin Owens John Cena matches where they reversed each other 40,000 times. What are they gonna do with this, Mark? How are they gonna pull this off telling stories when you can't reverse finishers?
It's not you can't reverse finishers. It's you can't kick out, because they want to set that up as being something special, quote unquote. And that's how they like to do things. That's why you didn't see blood there for so many years. WWE's mindset is, if I don't give it to the crowd for long enough, they'll forget about it. That way when I pull it back, they'll be like, oh my, that's amazing. Kind of like the Freebird rule with the New Day.
That's why they don't give us so many creative storylines all the time, so that when they finally get one right, they're like, oh, wow, that was creative.
Exactly. You're still watching, aren't you?
I mean, yeah, we did watch Monday Night Raw, which was the exact same thing as Night of Champions, so.
Well, the only complaint I had about the match was the fact that it almost resembled the match with Charlotte and Nikki Bella, in the sense that Cena was almost dominated by Rollins yet again, and y'all may disagree, and that's fine. But it seemed too predictable that Cena would magically do the AA out of nowhere at the end of the match and win. Like they were just trying to rush the ending to it.
It felt like the same finish. When you go watch it back and forth, you can literally see him roll through, pick him up, hold him, put him on his shoulders, and dump him. It's the same finish. That bothered me. Here's my other complaint. And y'all tell me if I'm off base on this. I know it's going to get a lot of backlash from other IWC people. This will be the third time that the United States champion has pinned the World Heavyweight Champion. I know we've said 1,000 times, including myself on this show, that Seth Rollins doesn't have to win to look strong. At the same time, isn't it really making your heavyweight title look weak that the champion can't beat the U.S. champion at all? Mark?
Well, no, because the U.S. champion would be the U.S. and the WWE World Heavyweight Champion if it wasn't for outside interference. So, theoretically, John Cena's always looked better than Seth Rollins. And I get to go see the U.S. Championship Open. That's amazing. And I knew Seth wasn't going to win this, so it's no big deal to me.
It isn't the fact that he wasn't going to win, it's how easily he lost, right, Brian?
And it's the fact that Seth Rollins seems to dominate throughout the match, even though he's got an injured leg because of the unfair booking that they gave him at Night of Champions. And of course, everybody knows he's going to lose. But like you said, Anthony, it's the fact that it was such a forced ending. Yeah, we know he's going to lose, but make him lose by not dominating the match the entire time. And a couple things about Rollins being the champion. Let us not forget that he really didn't pin the current champion at the time to even get that belt. Not taking away from Rollins. He never pinned Brock Lesnar.
Well, he couldn't pin Brock Lesnar. It's not possible.
As far as him looking weak, he never pinned the champion to get the belt. And this whole rule with not kicking out of the finishers, how's Rollins going to fall into that if he can't even make up his mind which finisher he wants to use?
Speaking of which, bringing up Brock Lesnar, he's going to be on his Go to Hell tour at Madison Square Garden against the Big Show. They decided to make Big Show look really strong tonight. He knocked out Cesaro with this, I used to be the WMD, it's just now the Big Punch. Mark, I was upset with Cesaro losing this match. You were not. You said it was good for the Big Show building his character.
Going in against Brock Lesnar, you have to have somebody dominate for a little while in order for people actually to believe that they can stand toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar. They did it to Roman Reigns in the whole build-up all the way through to WrestleMania last year. So I can see where they're coming from, having him knock out Cesaro. I'm hoping that it leads later on after the Big Show goes to Suplex City, because yes, Brock Lesnar is taking him there. It might be only 1 or 2 trips, but he'll get there.
His big ass is not going to Suplex City, and that's exactly what he told the audience. Brian, were you okay with Big Show winning here, or do you understand why they had to do it this way?
I understand the psychology behind it, putting Big Show over to really sell the fact that Brock's going to have the greatest giant in their business in front of him. Now, I'm going to have to agree with Mark. It may not be a round trip. It may be a one-way ticket, but he's going to Suplex City. It's going to happen. Believe that.
It ain't like an F5 when you got them on your shoulder and you can just dump them to the side. You gotta pick them up and throw them over your head and hope they don't land on your neck. Now, if anybody's gonna try it, it's gonna be Brock Lesnar, because Brock's gonna be like, well, if he lands on my head, so what? I'm Brock Lesnar. And Brock's gonna regret that if he lands on his head, I promise you. Shout out to Cesaro for the suplex that he hit right before the finish, and I do like how they tied that into the finish, because he was so exasperated from hitting the suplex that he could barely stand up, and that's what led to the punch. So I kind of like how they added that into the finish. They still made Cesaro look strong. It just doesn't do anything for his character development. After the Seth Rollins match that ended, we had Kane pop up on the Titantron to tell Seth that his challengers are lining up one by one. Lights go out. Monster Kane is waiting under the ring. Pulls Seth Rollins under with a struggle. And that is how the show ends. It appears Monster Kane is next in line, perhaps at Hell in a Cell, for Seth Rollins' title. Brian, I will let you talk about your final thoughts here, and go ahead and grade the show while we're at it.
This was my favorite segment of the night, just because the nature of the attack and how they performed it. I grew up watching this type of wrestling where The Undertaker would bust through the bottom of the ring and pull his victims down. I thought it was pretty clever that they actually went that direction. I'm going to give it a B+. Same grade that I gave Night of Champions, because it was practically the same one, so it deserves the same grade. Overall, I enjoyed most of the segments of the show that were different. I look forward to see where they're going to go as far as the Kane episode. That's going to be pretty interesting.
Like I said before the last episode, 3 months ago, nobody would have cared about this Kane thing, but the crowd definitely were invested heavily when Kane cut that promo on the Titantron. They're pro Kane. Mark, you okay with Kane being the guy here?
Absolutely. He deserves it if anyone else deserves it. I, too, am enjoying the multiple personalities of Kane, and we both get to see the funny side of Kane, and we get to see the dominant that we got back in 1998, so I'm all right with that. The final show grade, I would have to give a B+, simply because of the page bomb. It's no longer called a pipe bomb, by the way. It's a page bomb. And also, even though it was a multiple match highlight night, the majority of the matches were pretty decent. They just didn't progress the storylines as much as necessary. Hopefully we get more leading into Hell in a Cell.
I'm going with the B for that simple fact alone that it was a bunch of rematches. That's all it was coming off of it. We did have the Page thing, which was refreshing, and we had the Kane thing, which was refreshing, but other than that, there was nothing creative on this show.
Can we call it a page break?
A Page break, yeah, because I definitely feel like we don't need to call it a bomb, period. As I said before, that's an insult to the other ones. Hashtag Page break. That's what we need to do. Also, if you want to blame anything on creative, I haven't done this in a while, and this feels really, really good to get this back in the show. Hashtag fire Kevin Dunn. Blame him for everything. This is all Kevin Dunn's fault.
He gave you a page bomb, sir. Yes, that was. It's all his idea, the Divas Revolution and everything. So you pay some respect.
You think he gives two craps about Paige? He only likes women with silicone and a bunch of spray paint tans. He doesn't care about Paige. He probably doesn't even look at her twice. Brian, any final thoughts before we end the show?
Hashtag fire Kevin Dunn. Hashtag page break.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Raw Reaction. As always, you can catch us on Max Sports Channel and Power Station FM. WrestlingGoodRadio.blogspot.com is where you'll find our podcast and all of our social media links, including iTunes. go ahead and give us a subscribe there. And if you would, review us while you're at it. That would do us a big help a lot. We also want to thank GeorgiaWrestlingFans.com for making us their new partner. For all of Georgia wrestling, you can check out Wrestling News Radio and everything going on the local circuit there. Again, that's GeorgiaWrestlingFans.com. October 25th, we'll be working our next live event. WGR will be at a charity event in Douglasville, Georgia at the National Guard Armory. Stay tuned for more details on that. For Brian Compton, for Mark Pitts, I'm Anthony Hammett. We are Wrestling News Radio, the podcast from the IWC for the IWC, and we will see you when we see you.